I'd like to welcome everyone today. I'm President Garcia Morales, and I call this special board meeting of July 25th to order. The time is 9:10 a.m. I'd like to remind everybody to please silence their electronic devices. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the territorial homelands of the Nauvoo, the Moapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. Trustee Guzman, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Trustee Brooks, are you ready to make the motion?
Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes. Additional reference material is provided for item 2.01, superintendent search.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Cavazos?
I would like to second that motion, please.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. The motion passes 6-0. Excellent. All right, colleagues, we are going to move on to item 2.01, superintendent search. We're here to discuss the engage phase. Maybe it's a phase too. The engage phase, participants, the timeline, the advertising, and due diligence options that our search firm, Hazard Young, Atita and Associates, hello, good morning, needs, and the needs our direction, they need our direction on, so they can continue their work on the search. And I ask that we listen to their presentation from our firm and then discuss each item separately to ensure that we provide clear guidance. I'll now turn it over to Nancy Perez, Chief Operating Officer of HYA, and for her to share what we need to provide guidance on. Thank you, Nancy.
It's my great honor to be here today. Oh, thank you. It's my great honor to be here today working with all of you. I just want to start off by saying that everything's been going very, very well with the great help of your staff. And I just want to acknowledge how wonderful they've been in helping to get all of this information together for all of you. I also want to acknowledge that this is your search. We are here to facilitate. We are here to provide some advice, given all the work that we do. But ultimately, some people say, well, who did you place? Who did you slate? No, this is your search. You decide who you want to interview. You decide who gets the job. You decide what the focus groups are. We are here to facilitate a process. And so I think that that's really, really important for everyone to know and the community to know that we are here as your lighthouse, right? As your organizer, as your facilitator, as ambassadors to ensure that the voices in your community are heard and heard by an independent third party, but certainly not to drive the agenda, to drive the process more than what is best practice, or to make major decisions with regard to who ends up being your next superintendent. So I just wanted to bring today the ambassadors that will be out in the field representing the trustees and working with all of your community members. The only one that's not here with us today is Makai Ali. And I also want you to know that we have a really extensive list of community members to engage with. And HYA has capacity beyond those that are focal point in this search to bring in other associates that may speak certain world languages, that if we need to have 6 or 7 things going on simultaneously, we can handle that. So the sky's the limit in terms of what you decide is the right approach for engaging with the community. So I'm just going to let each of the team members introduce themselves so you know who the ambassadors are of this great district.
Hi, good to see you all again. I'm Sean Joseph, Senior Associate, Hazard Young and Atia.
Good morning. My name is Kawita Adams, and I'm one of the associates with HYA.
My name is Leanne Salazar Montoya, and I'm an associate with HYA.
Wonderful. So as we proceed through the agenda and all the different discussions and decisions that need to be made today, we also put together a PowerPoint just to help orient you with where we are in the agenda. And I'll also refer to the documents by reference number so you know which one we're on as well, so that we can efficiently move through all the decisions that need to be made. So first up is the calendar. We brought that to the board in prior sessions. The last time Sean presented that, we got some feedback. The only thing that I think needs to change slightly on this calendar would be to allow the focus groups to go a little bit longer than August 29th, just so that, given the magnitude of the number of groups that we might be meeting with, we have a little more time. I don't think that's going to change anything in the later dates, other than when the draft leadership profile is presented on September 12th, that will include all focus groups up to that date with emerging themes. And then the final one will come before the board on the 26th. That would include any of the focus groups that happened between the draft and the final. I think that that's perfectly acceptable. We can talk a little bit more about that when we get to the focus group session. As we look at the calendar, this is really our roadmap. And so if the board agrees to this calendar, we have our marching orders and we make sure that we follow it, that you get the updates that you're entitled to per the calendar, and that we make sure we can meet your timeline of October 30th of approving a finalist. So any discussion or comments on the calendar?
I don't see any. Let's, Trustee Cavazos.
Yes, on the calendar, on the dates that are listed that are basically, not set in stone, I guess, Madam President, where it says open to, being changed. We had quite a discussion last time about the 9 o'clock meetings not being conducive to being inclusive of, that's hard to say, conducive to being inclusive of the community. So I wondered if we were going to determine that at this time, and if I could get some feedback from my other colleagues who expressed some concerns with that.
Thank you. I remember clearly there is a strong desire to change the meeting time to later in the day. I think we had played with 12 to 4 o'clock, something along those lines. And I believe one of the reasons why this reference material now has time subject to change is because of that conversation. And it is, as we get closer to this date, I believe knowing how many finalists we have to interview, I think will help us determine what time that meeting should take place. If I remember correctly, that conversation was pretty clear to give us direction to make changes to the meeting. However, I think we have to be prepared for any time. It could be a 1 o'clock, a 2 o'clock, a 3 o'clock, but as we get closer, we will determine that as a group. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President, for that clarification. So if I'm just to reflect and to reiterate what you just said, so as we get closer to those dates, we would be able to determine an appropriate time after we know, basically, how much time we need with the number of applicants that we have. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Satori?
My only thought on that, am I on? Okay. My only thought was yes, it was the later one. Wait, I just circled it and I lost my page. To do that one earlier, but the September 4th one is at 4, so if we wanted to make that one an earlier one to kind of reduce the number of later times, because that's a work session and it's not, that one might be able to be moved to 9, and basically flip-flop those two. Do this one earlier in the morning since it's more of a work session, and then the panelists one later.
Thank you for that recommendation. I believe that because it's a work session, we've chosen to keep that at 4 o'clock, and that is it's a good practice for us to continue to have those meetings that are currently established, the public knows to expect us to have at 4 o'clock. And I believe this one specifically will not have any interviews of candidates. It's simply just process for us, a process discussion. Thank you. Okay. Anything else, Trustee Satori? Okay. All right. I'm going to turn off your mic. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I also recall that the last time we had a conversation about the calendar, we were talking about changing the time was one option to a later time. And then I think another idea we were discussing as a group was maybe even doing like the longer initial interviews, like on a Saturday possibly. So I'm wondering, is this kind of putting it out of the table, or is that still like something we can discuss?
As we get closer, and that's, forgive me, maybe you should say date and time subject to change, because I believe that was also the intent, that there is a desire for potentially that shift to take place. But as we're still in July, if you all can still believe it, looking into what October looks like for us is maybe premature at this time.
Okay, so for clarification, we can still adjust that way, date and time for these meetings?
That's a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Sparza-Strophican?
Trustee Zamora took the same comment that I was going to make, and I'm going to put it on the record that I would like to request it to be done on a Saturday, because I'm noticing that October 9th is on a Wednesday, and again, for the board initial interviews, and then the semifinalist interviews are also on a Wednesday on October 16th, and I think we need to provide a variety. We had a robust discussion last time, so I want to put it on the record that I would request that we consider a Saturday.
Thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I actually want to make a motion to accept this calendar and build in flexibility required to adjust times and dates as needed, provided that the board is kept in the loop.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Guzman, do you have a second?
Yes. I'd like to second.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Okay, colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. Okay, I think we've got a rhythm, Nancy, for us to go one by one on each of these items, and thank you for pausing so that we can take an action on them.
Sorry. Before we move on to the next item, I just wanted to remind the board that the staff here is putting together the website. It is reference 2.01H. This is just a printout of what they've been working on. There's no action to take on this, but just to remind the board and the community that everything that the board gets will be on the website. And this will be our place to make sure that all information is transparent, both to all the associates, to the trustees, to the community. And just wanted to reiterate that. And also, the staff here put together this printout so you can just kind of see it's in motion here to get all of these pieces together for this web page on your site. Okay. So moving on.
Nancy, do you
Yes.
mind if I just have a moment, please?
Please.
Because if we are colleagues, it sounds like there's an appetite to to conduct motions as we go along, which may help us move the conversation along really well. We would benefit from hearing from public comment first, and then continuing on with the presentation and then taking motions along the way.
Great.
Is that okay? Yeah, thank you. We'll start with the individuals who signed up in advance. Sheila Moulton, please come on up. And followed by David Gomez and Ed Gonzalez. Thank you. So we'll just hang tight to the presentation
worries.
and then get back to it. Appreciate it.
Perfect.
Good morning.
I'm sorry, I turned off your microphone.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Moulton for the record. I thank each of you for your service to our most valuable resources, our students and families. In February of 2020, several former CCSD trustees and other community leaders banded together to form ABC, a better choice for our students. Our mission statement states, help elect and support Clark County School Board trustees who are professional, principled, and student-focused. I am here today to share a brief story and to offer the assistance of the ABC PAC in the upcoming superintendent search process. In 1998, as I came on the board, Dr. Brian Cram announced his resignation after over a decade of service as superintendent. He gave us 18 months to hire a new superintendent. We hired Hazard, Young, and Attia. And after the first round of candidates pulled out of the process, Bill Attia came to this very boardroom and, paraphrasing and very professionally, said, "You are good individual board members, but you're not a good board." We were individual board members concerned for our students, but we were each wanted to give separate instruction and directions to the superintendent. Mary Beth Scow, the board president at the time, proposed a policy governance model by John and Miriam Carver. We applied for and obtained a $250,000 grant from the Broad Foundation to develop and be trained to implement policies to oversee the district. In my 12 years of service, we built/rebuilt 116 schools and grew from 210,000 students to 310,000 students. One year, we hired 3,000 teachers. Our district transitioned from a majority to a minority student population. We passed a multi-billion-dollar building bond fund, and under No Child Left Behind, student achievement improved. Yes, we had significant pushback of the policy governance model, but governance through policy was an absolute necessity. ABC PAC members have over 80 years' experience as trustees. We have all gone through several superintendent searches. We are here as individuals or as a team to share our expertise, both good and challenging, as you proceed with the search. I have watched or listened to almost every board meeting for the past several years. There is no doubt you all care about students in our community. But to engage in a successful search as a board, you must show unity, compromise, knowledge, and professionalism. ABC PAC is here to assist you as individuals or as a board however we can. Thank you for your time and your service. I have copies of that and also a little explanation of ABC PAC I'll leave for all of you, including Hazard.
Thank you, Sheila. Mr. Gomez?
David Gomez, for the record, Nevada Peace Alliance president, former president of many different organizations. But I'm sad that we can pray in firehouses, even the city of North Las Vegas lets us pray, but you guys don't pray here. So that tells me a lot about where you guys stand and where your foundation is, because you're too concerned about opinions versus what you need to do. This country was based on God. Going to federal courthouse, God we trust. Our money and God we trust. But yet, our school district doesn't have the same model. And God we do not trust. And God we will not pray to. And God we will not ask for guidance and directions from. So, I'm up here to tell you that, you know, when you go to look for these superintendents, and I've been here for a long time, this lady just took me way back in the past. I remember that. But you got to remember also that you got to check, and I mean this, there's nothing more important than you doing your job. I do mine. I owned all the CC's Pizzas. I'm the son of Carpeteria. I have all these other partnerships. I have trucking companies all the way to esthetician, and I'm not even an esthetician. I own all these businesses with partnerships. And I know how to pick people that are going to make me look good and do a very good job, and make my father look good when he does his job. So we're giving somebody the autonomy to control all of our children, which is my children, my share. I'm a shareholder. My children bring value to the school district. I don't see anybody doing the jobs that I've done for 25 years for free. You can claim that you've done a lot of things, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty and you get out there and you do this work and you get in there and do it for free without asking for a dollar, then you are doing a service to the people and to the children and first to God. But obviously, if you guys don't look back and do not let no one, not even myself, influence you to pick someone that looks like me or part of another part of me. Because I'm a Afro-Latino, as they call it. I say Blaxican, whatever it is. Don't pick someone just because they look like me. Pick someone who's going to care about my children, because I won't stop fighting. I will not go away. I will be a thorn in your flesh, and I will not let you get away. I will chain myself to you until you realize that at that point, I'm not going to let you escape. I'm grateful for our counsel, because she caught it. I was sitting back there, and I was thinking, I said, how do you have a vote without public comment? And I don't even sit on the dais. I did for a long time, but thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. That's it. Come on up, Ed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ed Gonzalez. I do appreciate these meetings and the process. I'm not going to give my input on what I think a superintendent is. You guys are creating that process. I'm going to give my input on the process of the process. I know it's very technical. But last time I came here and we spoke on superintendent search, I mentioned LA Unified. I believe this group did LA Unified in 2021, and that was a challenging time. What I liked about the LA Unified that you guys haven't discussed is they had street teams. So they had, I believe, 129 schools that they send people to. I think it was a third-party group that they did. And they spoke to, and they did surveys, 690 in the report that I was reading up. They're about 7.4 per school. Now, to give you an idea, I don't expect, if you guys were going to go that, to do 129. The equivalent, because they're a much larger district, would be about 38 schools. And I think it's important because we have a lot of communities where it's a little bit of a challenge to get online access. I see Councilman Barone there. I think about areas like over by Von Tobel Middle School. That'd be a good area to do it. Areas on the east side, areas on the historic west side, even in Henderson down closer to Water Street. Those are areas that I think we will probably get less input. And so I mention this, not that I think it's an idea that should be considered, whether it's a group that you do within the consultants or something you think that community and family engagement may want to participate in. Because I think that's something, well, it doesn't need to necessarily be added to the calendar, is a thought that we can do. So I don't know if we had it done internally through the district, if we think there'd be some undue influence on that aspect of that. But I think it's something I just want to remind the board that I mentioned in the past for you to consider as we move forward. Other than that, I'm very pleased about how this process looks. I look forward to seeing how this all turns out. So with that, Madam President, I will end my conversation, yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Okay. I believe that concludes public comment on this particular item. Council?
And just to be clear, we don't need to redo that first vote because technically you guys didn't even need to take that first vote since it was on the calendar that you already approved at the July 11th meeting. So just declare it the record.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Perfect. Let's keep it going, Nancy.
Great, thank you. On to item number 2, scheduling interviews with board members.
Nancy, forgive me. Could you turn on your mic?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, you're good.
Item number 2, scheduling interviews with board members. I apologize for a little bit of the confusion here. We want to start scheduling those immediately following today's meeting. What we brought forth to the trustees are individual interview probes. Really, what we do is we spend time with each of you in these areas of vision, priorities, climate and culture, leadership and management, academic and operational goals, to really try to get a full picture of where CCSD is at. And so the probes are there to guide the conversation, but the conversation can go in whatever direction the trustee wishes for it to go. We like to start off every search with these individual interviews. And so for today, there's no action on this item other than to ask and to make sure that you know that even if what you want to talk about is not in specifically a question on this probe list, obviously everything falls into one of these big buckets in terms of managing and governing a school district. So if there's any other questions on that item, otherwise we can just move on.
Thank you. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. So when we were discussing this, at the last board meeting. The information that we shared is included in this. I just want to ensure that there's like a threading or a streamlining so that you're aware of what we stated.
Yes, we'll be sure. Once we speak with everyone individually, we'll pull it together because as was communicated earlier, it's what our job is to focus on what the board as a collective is looking for and needs. So we'll bring those themes back and understand this is, this is what individuals said, and here are the themes and the through lines that unify everyone. And
Great.
make sure we communicate that.
Thank you.
All right, we can keep it going.
Great. So we're on to number 3, focus groups. And we really just heard eloquently from one of your community members, Ed, about really this as a wonderful opportunity to engage and know your community. That's what's really so great about the search process, is it really does yield this other opportunity to get information and know about things that maybe you weren't quite so aware of. And so as your ambassadors, we're out there beyond the 4 of us to make sure that we engage to the nth degree. What we have before us, and these are items, let me tell you the numbers that were on here. It is additional reference 2.01C, 2.01F, and 2.01G. All of these potential focus groups came to us via your staff, via the trustees, via past groups that have been utilized. And so what I think is the next step is to take all of this information and bring it back to the board on August 7th, which is the focus group meeting schedule discussion, and put these voluminous pages, over probably 70 in total between all of those different reference numbers, into what are like groups. So for example, if you look at additional reference 2.1F, you can see the organization listed on page 9 of 66. Those are clearly focus groups that we can then do. Some of those are repeated then on later pages, right? On the later pages, you can see several names that are listed within an organization. So for example, the Clark County School District Police Department would probably be a focus group, or one that we bring back for you to react to. So I think the next step, now that we've gotten so much information here, is to really cross-reference all these different pieces, put together a list of focus groups, and then bring it back to the board on the 7th for you to react to. I think we can also, when we bring those focus groups back, state that whether or not we think they could be virtual or in person, and of course, any group can change it. So for example, let's say that the group of boys and girls clubs, for example, we had it down for virtual, and they say, we'd really like you to come to our office and have the focus group there. That's fine. So we can entertain that as well. In addition to the groups on all of these pages, we would recommend having what I'll call more like a town hall type focus group, one in each region plus the transformation network. That would give anybody that isn't in one of these groups and hasn't been touched by us because they're also participating in one of these stakeholder groups, the opportunity to come out and also react to the needs of CCSD and their desires in the next superintendent. That can be done at a school so that it's, most convenient. Whatever the staff here helps us and guides us to do that. And I envision us bringing that plan back to you on August 7th without the meeting dates or times yet, but just the list. And then saying, okay, yes, we think this is good. We think this is comprehensive. Now go ahead and start scheduling all of those. So that would be my recommendation, but of course, we can alter that plan to the trustees' desires.
And Nancy, please remind us, we are taking action on, no action. Taking action on-
Correct. So at this point, because we have so much voluminous information, we would hold off that any action on actually approving the focus group items until that August 7th meeting.
Great, got it. Thank you for that. Thank you for, I want to underline gratitude to staff for bringing all of these documents together for us and for providing us this very comprehensive list. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a question about the contacts sheet. There's some organizations that seem to have significantly higher number of people than the others. How do you plan on balancing the overrepresentation in some of the organizations?
So the number of people that show up to a focus group doesn't get more weight than another, right? When we eventually give you the leadership profile, we're going to be synthesizing information across all groups that we've heard from and try to come up with, well, the first draft will have emerging themes for you to react to. Here are the things that we're hearing over and over and over again. And so we really try to synthesize the information, not put weight on what's more important to one group than another, but really try to find the common ground. Because when you're looking for your next superintendent and what are the capabilities, skills, and qualities, right? Yes, there's a typical job description, but where are the areas that this community and this board feel is most essential to move this district forward in the next 3 to 5 years? And so those are the themes that we're going to be looking at, and certainly we will not weigh one group more than other. We do report back on how many people attended, just because it's interesting, right? To say like, okay, here was this group, and this is how many people were there. We do not transcribe word for word or bullet point what focus groups said, because if it is a small n, then it can be determined who would have said that, and we want these to be safe places. But we will provide a summary of the key points of that group, and then we will also then obviously synthesize it in the aggregate to the actual leadership profile and what we believe are those leadership characteristics.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Johnson?
Thank you. Can you describe how the surveys that we'll get from the public then align with the focus groups? And then, so that's question one. And then question two is, if a person is in the focus group, are we going to encourage them to also take the survey in that space? So the answer to that is yes. That's
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So then the first question is just the only important one then for me.
Yes, thank you so much, Trustee Johnson. So I like to look at the focus groups as being more granular information than what the survey provides. So the survey gives people an opportunity to react on big, broad questions. And when you force them, for example, in the priority section to choose only 4, we will give you that information by disaggregated group and show you where the groups are agreeing in terms of what should be the priorities. So it's actually a really nice report that you get. The focus groups provide more granular information to how people are feeling about really more specific topics than the big overarching general leadership profile. And I feel that that is much better done through focus groups than open-ended questions. Open-ended questions, I think, really give people, it's not a good way to have voices be heard. It's not, it doesn't coalesce around a disciplined approach, right? It's just kind of, I'm going to say all these things. And so we really recommend not having open-ended questions on the survey, but rather having extensive focus groups. And that way you can get the granular information that people wanted to say that was beyond the big, big questions of the survey in a more disciplined academic research-based approach. Yes.
I have a curiosity, Nancy, in terms of that it's a similar tangential question to something has already been asked. Given some of our community events that community forums that we've had in the past, sometimes we have a propensity in our community to hear from the same exact voice at all the different, at the different meetings. How do we account for those same voices who will come likely to all of our town halls or focus groups? How do you account for that in the report out?
Right. So any voice that is louder, right, or more frequent is not weighted more heavily. In fact, it's our job to create a safe space in these focus groups that encourages those that are sitting there, maybe not saying anything, to really get involved, right? And saying, thank you very much. We've heard you. Let's see what other people here have to say. And kind of give them prompts and probes to start getting them to speak up. That really only happens when they feel good in their space, right? Location matters. The facilitator matters, right? And creating that really kind of trusting, safe environment where people want to reveal themselves. And so, I will say that the people at the table here are very skilled at doing that. And so we will absolutely try to exceed your expectations in being that kind of ambassador.
Thank you for ensuring that all voices are heard. Perfect. Trustee Sparza Straffigan?
So I have a question because it was one of the categories for voices to be heard, and it was listed as students. And I was very mindful that I did not submit any student names, even though I wanted to submit student names because of the fact that these would be public-facing documents. So my question to you is, how are we going to hear from students? And I kind of want to hear that granular answer versus not just like getting surveys, getting town hall, that type of thing. How are we going to tap into student voice? And then there's a part two. It's a second question.
Student voice is so important, and you will be surprised at how they reveal themselves. The survey is one opportunity. Sometimes we see very low participation rates for the survey. And so in working with the regional directors and then the principals at the schools, through your staff, we will see what is the best way to get students involved. Usually it is with existing groups, student council, student government that already exist at the school level, to invite them as representatives of their student body to then have focus groups. And so that's usually how it works. However, we're open to whatever the school system thinks is best given your structures.
And I would just ask, because you're such a large district, I would recommend virtual meetings with students directly, because you can pull students from across high schools or middle schools, whatever you all believe would be the best group to hear from. I know when I did it in Paterson, New Jersey, we did virtual focus groups with students directly, and had maybe 3 or 4 different sets of focus groups for students to come in, and that's where we got the input from students directly.
So I have a part two to this because we've been very intentional to include voices that are not often heard. And so the Student Advisory Council met a week ago, and it was also representing students that are not student council representatives. And I think I would encourage us to consider making sure that we tap into voices that are not often heard from our student communities, that are marginalized, that don't necessarily maybe have the language capacity. So that's why I appreciated, I know we're going to talk about it later, about access to hearing from other students that maybe English is not their first language. So I just want to make sure that we intentionally reach all different groups of students. And then if you would mind, President, I want to get in a second question that relates to this topic. So part two is, how can I as a trustee prepare for the August 7th meeting? Because we're going to have a discussion about the individuals that we brought in to recommend, and is there anything on our end that we can be ready and prepare for on that day?
Only that we will give you the list before the 7th, so for that you to actually be able to take a look at that and say, is it comprehensive? Is there anything here that I think is not necessary? Is there anything additional that needs to be added? Other than that, I think that would be the preparation.
Thank you, Trustee Sparta-Strophigan. Adding to that question, so could you walk us through that process in preparation of August 7th? We typically we'll post the agenda July 31st, August 1st? No, August, okay. We'll post the agenda at least 4 days, business days beforehand. And so members will have that information, like the list of focus groups. Should we expect that list of focus groups the day the agenda is posted, or will we get a preview of that during the day before the meeting? If you could provide additional insight into that.
Yeah, it might be a little bit later than the day the agenda is posted,
Okay.
just because of the voluminous nature of these groups. We will try to get it to you as quickly as possible. Joe and Nicole and I will be working diligently to try to pull this together in a draft format, of course, with the input from the team. As soon as we have it, we'll get it to you. It might not be posted with the agenda, but it will be forthcoming, and certainly before the 7th, so you have time to review it.
Thank you for that. So thank you, colleagues, in advance for the grace that you'll share of that short turnaround so that you provide feedback. Now, Nancy, if there are additions that we want to add, should we be prepared to share those with you in advance of the meeting, and that will be included in the list, or should we just be prepared to hash that out in public?
I think that it would be better to do it beforehand through Joe. If you're looking through these documents, again, the references, the 2.01 F, C, and G, if there's something that's glaringly missing, I realize, it's voluminous and the people are listed several times within a group, several individuals within a group. But if there's something glaringly missing here, please do email Joe, and then we'll get it on the draft list to bring to you on the 7th so that it's inclusive. I think that would be a better process. That way everybody can see it before the meeting and be prepared.
And then Joe will share that list with you. I think we need to come up with a, perfect, thank you. And then you'll take that list and make the magic happen. You
Yep.
and your team will make the magic happen. I think it's imperative, colleagues, that and this is my message and note to you, and certainly an email, to please, if there are additions, that you provide these as soon as possible so the staff does not have to scramble or lose sleep over, that we're considering of staff's time, please, and our HYA's time, so that we ensure our needs are met and they're are able to do their job efficiently and not scrambling at the last minute.
And let me say this, Madam Chair and trustees, oftentimes there's an omission, and it's not because there was some grand plan of that. There was just an omission and an error, and we put them in after the fact. Sometimes as we're doing focus groups, another group comes out and says, it really would be better if we also, within our organization, we have this. We'll do it.
Sure.
So I think it's important for the community to know that if there's a mission, this is voluminous. It wasn't because there was some, idea that you were not worthy of a focus group. Quite the latter. We certainly can be dynamic and add along the way should there be an omission that was just an error.
Great, thank you for that.
Yes.
Appreciate that extension. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to build on the conversation about student inclusion. You touched on possibly including the Student Advisory Committee. I think that's a good shift. I would also suggest maybe there's a student representative on the school organizational teams. If you actually maybe invited all of those students, they were selected to actually serve in that position. So it might be a good representation at the school level for an individual student. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, thank you for that. It sounds like, do we need a motion on this particular item?
I do not believe we do, Nicole, correct?
Let's keep it
No,
going. They're
let's
doing
keep
a
it
great
going.
job.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. So moving on to number 4, which is the online survey. Let me just get myself organized here. So I am going to refer to reference 2.01D, and I'm going to refer to 2.01E as well as 2.01D and E. And I can kind of hold them up as we go along. To be as efficient as we can, let's start with the disaggregated groups. The disaggregated groups are listed on the agenda. There are 6 of them. We also did have Trustee Brooks submit a question, or I'd at least like it clarified, about including another group about former employees. Could Trustee Brooks, there you are. Could you clarify a little bit about what you were thinking there?
Trustee Brooks?
This is on 2.01D.
Thank you, Madam President. So the disaggregation would be if they recently separated from the district. I think that that's valuable to know kind of what that group is thinking, because if they left for dissatisfaction reasons, then I want to really consider what they're looking for as far as leadership qualities.
Yes, I understand. So we would call that former, so you'd have administrator, teacher, support professional, and then former employee?
Yeah, you could be just recently former employee within however many years.
Okay. Is that the language we would like to use then, former employee, or former employee of?
Former district employee
Okay.
within 1 year.
Within 1 year.
1 or 2, I don't know, what's a good range?
I see members.
I kind of feel like just former district employee, because
Okay.
then they're going to get confused. Well, now should I choose community member?
Okay.
Or should I, so I feel like
Just former employee. is
just
fine.
former district employee. Okay, then we will have 7 disaggregated groups. Is there any other comment or communication on that?
Great. Thank you for that feedback, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you. I turned in my focus group material late, so I apologize for that. I just had a question. I'm looking here on the email that I sent council and Mr. Caruso last night, and I apologize. I did not include this, so this is more coming from an educator in our district, and that's with number 2, where it says teacher. They want to know, should we assume that that is going to include all licensed professionals, not just teacher, but for instance, we have licensed professionals that are social workers, that are psychologists,
Yes.
that are learning strategists, and all we have down there is teacher.
Thank you very much. Many districts do teacher/licensed professional. You could not do teacher at all and just do licensed faculty, or whatever is the terminology that you mostly use would be the best to utilize on the survey.
Trustee Cavazos?
I would like to hear from my colleagues. I would be okay with what, I think Nancy, what you had just said, that some districts will do teacher slash all licensed professionals, but
Yep.
I don't know whether it would be the, as far as colleagues, would you like to just have all licensed professionals? I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for raising that up, Trustee Cavazos. I like the teacher/licensed professional recommendation too, and it sounds like there's some heads nodding over here too, in support of that recommendation. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so then we have the 7 groups, adding former district employee and adding teacher/all licensed professionals.
Great. Thank you. I have a couple of more folks in the queue. I'm going to
Okay.
turn it over to them. Thank you, Nancy. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. My question is, Nancy, on this sheet, that's what I'm looking at.
Yes.
And I'm looking at this sheet. So in the presentation, there's 7, well, now that we added the other one, there's 7 groups.
Yeah, this is just ones that have been chosen in the past. This is taken directly from the survey. It's just a list of potential groups. It was not meant to be what we're recommending for CCSD. That was on the
okay.
actual agenda.
Okay, because I'm good with this.
Great. That's what we're
Okay.
going with.
Thank
Yeah,
you
this is
so
just, in fact, redundant. It's what different districts have chosen. I could have been clearer about that. We literally download this directly from the survey instrument, and so that's why those are all listed there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Okay. Colleagues, all right, I think we're good.
Okay.
Good to go. Do we need a motion on this, colleagues?
There's a motion at the end for everything with the survey, if
Love
that's
it.
okay.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you, Nancy. Keep it going for us.
Okay, so then the survey questions I'd like to talk about next. We did receive some feedback, and I'm referring to additional reference 2.01E. Trustee Bustamante Adams suggested that we capture zip codes to ensure equity, and also have one open-ended short answer where they could add their email, which might be helpful to you to grow your database. We can accommodate both of those requests, should that be the desire of the board. I also received information from Trustee Esparza Stafragan, sorry. And I think that feedback was given for when we get to the interview stage of the superintendent, and you're shaking your head, so we will keep these all for when we do that conversation at a later date. The only other suggestion that was made that we will accommodate, should the board agree, is to change the word district to CCSD or Clark County, just to make it more personalized throughout the survey. So instead of saying the district is headed in the right direction, we can say CCSD, unless you prefer to keep it just as the district and only introduce in the introduction language about Clark County. So on the table is the zip code question, the collection of emails voluntarily, and the changing of the word district to CCSD.
I don't see any objections. I see colleagues shaking their heads and nodding general support. I'm going to turn it over to some members who are in the queue. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say I'm grateful that you could read my chicken scratch, so thank you.
It was great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Does that conclude the survey section?
One more piece of the
Okay.
survey section, which is languages, and if we're
Perfect.
okay, we can move on to that.
Yes, we can move on to that. It sounds like we are supportive of all three of those recommendations. Thank you.
So we are now on reference 2.01D, predominant spoken languages within Clark County School District. We can support whatever languages you would like the survey to be given in. We do have it professionally translated, so that this is not any kind of Google Translate where you could offend someone based on some AI translation. And for the reference for the board, your deputy superintendent and chief academic officer and assistant superintendent put together this list so that you can decide what languages you would like the survey to be provided in.
Thank you for that. I'll turn it over to colleagues. Trustee Zamora?
Madam President, my only question is, you said you were going to hire professionals to translate this. I'm curious to know, would they be local folks that will be doing the translating, or is it just national? And I only ask because, some of the language in Nevada that gets translated usually is very consistent to our communities here. So I just want to make sure it's all, consistent with Nevada and
We do use a professional company to do the translations. We certainly could have someone look over that after that's done to see if there's any problem. Usually the translations are understandable. The problem sometimes comes in the education jargon, area. So we can follow your lead on that. We would have it professionally translated, and then you could, we could forward it to these three individuals, and they can approve it if you would like, or whatever you desire.
Thank you for that flexibility.
Yep.
Okay, Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Do we know if this list is in the order in which this, from highest to lowest?
I don't believe it is. I would have to refer to Nicole. Do you know by any chance? No?
No, I believe it's just in a generic.
Yeah, generic
order.
thing. And I will tell you that this is extensive. We really never do a survey with this many languages. Not that I'm at all opposed to it. But this is, you have to realize, and they're going to take the survey and they're going to do a drop down and choose a language, and there's going to be a large list. Now, if you believe that that will be helpful in getting more people to take the survey, then by all means, we can do it. I think the staff here wanted to be as comprehensive as possible, just so that the board had a good idea of the predominantly spoken languages.
Okay, just to follow up, I definitely don't want to be exclusive, but I also know that a lot of people are bilingual, so maybe the top three, and my guess, based on demographics in my school, is probably English, Spanish, and Tagalog. But I don't know what the third most popular language in Clark County is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Counsel.
I just checked in with the communications office, and it's not in any particular order, so I'm not sure what the top three would be. I don't know if we have that information today. I don't believe we do.
Could we just say that 3 is a reasonable choice, and we'll find out what the top 3 are?
Absolutely.
Sounds like that
Yeah,
there's an appetite
we
for
can
that.
do that.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Sparsa-Strophagan?
So I was the one, I think, that requested the diverse, and because of the nature of our community, we attract a certain population, and I think the nation now is reflective of individuals that are coming from all over. But we, especially in Las Vegas, because of the industry that we have with hotel and tourism, so I would like my colleagues to consider expanding the list, but it would be helpful to know, because according to the document, it does say communication in the following languages was identified in order from most to least prominent. So I want to clarify that it seems like it does have an order.
Oh, yeah, it
from
does say that from the
most to
staff.
least
Yeah, it
prominent,
does.
right? So I'm willing to consider, just because having been a former administrator in a high school that had a very diverse community, I mean, is there a cost?
There is a cost to it in
Okay.
the translation.
What is that?
$415 per language.
Okay, okay. So 450 per language,
415 per language.
415 per language.
Correct.
Okay. So it's not an exorbitant cost.
No, we literally, we're not, we just have to pay the linguistic fees for that. Some languages are more than others, but we just do one fee so that it's easy, and some subsidize others. Obviously, Chinese is more expensive, for example, than Spanish, but.
Okay, and I know it's difficult because we're all looking at, we want to service and get all input from everyone. And so I would be amicable, I'm just going to put it on the table as an individual, to go from English down to Persian. And I don't know if there's an additional cost of Chinese inclusive of both with simplified and traditional Taiwan.
Yeah, those would be separate, so
Okay.
that would be $415 for each one.
But I'm just trying to think of the representation of our makeup of our students and our community, and the diversity that we have. So I'm comfortable with English to Persian, but I don't know how my colleagues feel. That's my input.
Thank you, Trustee Sparsa-Strophagan. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. So I know for a fact the top 3 languages in Nevada is English, Spanish, and Tagalog, just because that's what gets translated for our voter registrations here in Nevada. But I was also thinking, because I do want to make sure we include all the different languages, is there a way, and also looking at the list of focus groups and organizations we are, have on the list, if they can we can partner up with them and help with the translations, like have a community meeting where they're helping translating the survey and they're doing it together. If that's also an option we can look at, because I know a specific organization on the list that, you know, even when we talk about their translations, it's 7 different languages, but they do have a huge community here. So maybe kind of seeing those ideas, exploring that, of just getting together and really in partnership with the community organizations who are already doing translations.
Could those be focus groups? Do you have family liaisons like that provide translation, that those community groups trust already, that we could do a focus group? Because maybe that's better than doing all these different languages and all these different survey options, rather have a focus group, and that's more granular anyways, and not have all of these options, but rather have a focus group where there is the liaison that they trust already, that, you know, translates, and then we could do a focus group rather than include, you know, however many languages these are. This is really extensive.
I don't want to speak for all the languages, but I know that a good chunk of these, I can say that we can reach out to them.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Zamora, you're good. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. I actually want to just pause for a moment and make sure that I capture Trustee Cavazos's feedback. It is it's additional feedback, additional reference 2.01G. Do we have that as paper copies?
2.01G is executive due diligence.
Additional. I forget.
Additional, sorry.
Yes, it's additional. I know, but
2.01G.
yes,
I see.
we just want to make sure that we capture that, we don't miss that reference, since we had talked about it earlier, and I'm getting flagged to make sure that we, in the record, indicate that there is, she had very specific feedback specifically to the survey. So thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Yeah. All right, colleagues, back to the queue. And Trustee Bustamante Adams.
I just want to mention that in Southern Nevada, the United Way received a grant for $1.something million specifically for this topic, not necessarily the superintendent search, but access and language. And so I think back to what Nancy said, that we could figure out how to partner because they have the money to be able to pay for us to make sure that we ensure as many groups as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to ask a clarifying question. Who would pay for the additional translations?
It's part of your contract, and we bill you for that.
Got it. Okay, so it's us. Got it. I want to build off of what Trustee Esparza-Strophican shared, that I am supportive of, and Trustee Zamora has shared, top 3, and I would be willing to go to Chinese Simplified and Traditional Taiwan, so that we capture as many communities, and then ensure that we also find a way to partner closely with other groups to make sure that we have these focus groups in these specific languages for the rest. So that's what I'm putting on the table for my colleagues to digest. Trustee Cavazos, you're in the queue.
Thank you. I was just looking at the list and listening to you at the same time. I think that everybody's suggestions have been good today. I don't think that just the top 3 would be quite enough. That's my personal opinion. I like what Trustee Zamora is suggesting as far as partnering, and what Trustee Bustamante Adams is kind of looking outside the box. But I think something that is going to be very important here, and that the community is going to be looking at, is, are we being consistent? So are we doing one language with a focus group? Are we doing an interpreter with another group? How are we doing this? And so I think that's, it's kind of like the devil in the details. So I think that we're going to have to be very consistent on how we structure this. Otherwise, we could possibly give the impression that we're not being equitable with the way that we're, rolling out the process. So that would be my concern. But I do agree with Trustee Esparza-Strophican that I'd be okay with going down to Persian, and that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think that's 8, right? Number 8. So that's just
Inclusive
my
of
input.
Persian?
I'm sorry?
Inclusive of Persian?
I think she had said down to
To
Persian.
Chinese.
Is that what you had said, Ramon? Inclusive? Yeah, so that would be 8. 8 languages, I think. They're not numbered. Okay. So anyway, that's where I stand, but my main point was
Yeah.
on the consistency, that to take all of this into account, whether we're doing focus groups or anything, that our structure needs to be consistent so that everything appears inclusive, that no one's being left out. Thank you.
Trustee Guzman?
So I just want to be clear about how we're looking at this because I've heard a lot. And so I want to ensure that I understand. So Trustee Zamora stated that we have folks that could help us with translation. Trustee Bustamante Adams said that the United Way has a grant. And so what I'm asking is, when you were thinking about those two, were you thinking about them doing the translations, or are we thinking about going to Persian with the translations from the team? And then if we need additional translations of the survey, that we utilize community members? I need to just be clear.
All right, I'll turn it over to Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. I have one thing to get off my mind first because I'm in agreement to going down to the top 8 with reaching out to community partners. But I want to make sure that these top 8 are correct because it sounded like we had 2 mixed informations about it, right? Like this says that it's, identified in order of the most, language, and then we just got feedback that it wasn't. So I want to see if we can find the correct, if it is the correct languages, and then be in agreement of yes to the top 8 plus the community.
We can clarify that in the motion to make sure that whether or not this list is accurate, that have your motion reflect that we wanted in the top however many,
Okay,
whatever
perfect.
those may be.
Because I feel more comfortable agreeing with a motion like that, the top 8, not really stating the languages, the top 8 plus the community. What is it?
Okay. And then, okay. So having the motion, because I was going to make the motion. I was going to make the motion, but I wanted to be clear in my motion. So Trustee Bustamante Adams, were you thinking that the United Way would assist with the translation, or were you thinking that we would do the team up to Persian, and then if we needed assistance, all the way down?
Allow me one moment. Let me turn it over.
Thank you for the question. I could support Trustee Zamora's statement is up to 8. And then if we can use outside support where necessary,
Okay.
that we do.
Yeah, and I would say that we want it to be translated so that we know it's correct by the professionals that we utilize. We're fine with you reading it before it goes live, but knowing, timing and them having the urgency to get it back to us on time, to load it, I mean, it's a lot of effort. So I would not be comfortable in not having our people do the translation. I'm more than comfortable to have it read before it goes live, but that would be my recommendation.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we have the survey translated in the top 8 languages that will be determined by the district, and that it will be read before it goes live, and that we utilize community members for the rest of the languages as needed.
Thank you.
And
trustee.
can we add
Just
to
for
the motion?
clarification, yeah, that motion should include everything on item number 4 that you're
let's
seeking
turn-
to approve.
You're good. Trustee Guzman, can you please add those additional pieces?
Yes, I would like to add also the recommended survey groups and the questions. Okay, I'd like to, so I'm going to restate my motion because if I don't, Cavazos will kill me. All right, so my motion is that we accept the recommended survey groups that we have identified, that we accept the survey questions that we have identified, and and have a translation of the survey by the first 8 languages and utilize the community for the rest of the languages if needed. Is there anything else, Nicole? Okay, that's my motion.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify, and I'm ready and willing to second. Trustee Guzman, do you mean requesting the support of other community groups in reference to creating translations or for focus groups? So
Creating translations.
okay, let me get you back on. Oh, yeah,
Creating translations,
okay.
if needed,
For the remaining groups that are not.
for the remaining groups, if needed. And because I clarified if it was for focus groups and it wasn't, it was for translation.
Yeah. Thank you. I actually would like I would support this motion if it's modified to remove the translation of the remaining groups through community support, simply because our firm just asked us, made a statement that they are not comfortable creating additional translations without the expertise of their professionals. And that may also, I can't help but to think about what delays it may have for us as a group as well, if we're waiting for groups to kind of get back to us around the translation. So I'm willing to support that, but I'm wondering if you're open to that modification in the motion so that we just simply stick to the 8 that we've agreed.
I would be if Trustee Zamora and Trustee Bustamante Adams are also open to that.
Could we ask that? Is that okay?
Yes,
Yeah?
please.
Yeah. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Trustee Guzman, because I did want to clarify. I would be very comfortable with doing the translations for the top 8 and then reaching out to community for the rest of the languages to do some type of focus group, and then going from there.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, and then Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Ditto.
Thank you for that. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Thank you, colleagues. And I want to take a moment because I acknowledge that Trustee Sparsa-Stroffican, excuse me, I did. Okay. It was me. I second this motion. Thank you, Trustee Guzman, for being amenable to my motion, my modification. Yes. And I am going to turn it over, even though we have a live motion, to turn it over to Trustee Sparsa-Stroffican, who is in the queue at this time, and then after her, we'll take a vote. Okay, thank you. Trustee Sparsa-Stroffican?
Madam President, I was trying to second the motion, but you beat me to it. So nonetheless, I do want to offer to my colleagues something for consideration just because it's been done. There are organizations like Catholic Community Charities that do provide individuals that can come to a forum of whatever kind, and we can have individuals wearing headsets that would be able to translate in the language so that the presentation would be in English and that the headset will translate the speaker of whatever language that we would expect to present and accommodate. So those are things that can happen, and we can partner with the community on our end to do that. So we will do our best not to exclude anyone, I think especially with our town hall and our forums. So my recommending the 8 is not because I'm excluding anyone, it's because I think we can accommodate the other languages that are in our community as well.
Great, thank you very much. All right, colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by trustee Guzman, a second by yours truly. Please cast your vote. Okay, thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. All right.
Okay, moving on to item number 5. There's no backup to this item. We simply need to know that when we are contacting candidates and recruiting, if the board wishes to reimburse them for interview travel.
All right, thank you for that. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I think we should do this, and I want to utilize my own personal experience. I have traveled to different states to interview for jobs, and they tell me that they will reimburse, and it makes it so that I don't have to think about, am I going to be able to afford this? And it could be great for the next step in my career. So I think it's important that we think about that. But, you know, obviously I want to hear what others think, but for myself, that is something that I do take into account when I'm applying for a job, whether or not they will reimburse me for my travel.
And for what it's worth, Trustee Guzman, I've worked on all of the big searches in this country that we've done in the last, 8 years, and I haven't had one that has not reimbursed. They may put some parameters around that, but I have not had a single district that I've worked with that has not reimbursed.
Great. Thank you for that feedback, Nancy and Trustee Guzman. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Is it typical for the applicants to go through the district to arrange their travel, or is it just a straight-up reimbursement typically?
In this case, since everyone will be public, it's more than appropriate for them to go directly through the district.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve candidate reimbursement, and travel will be arranged through the district in accordance with the district travel policies
Thank you, Trustee Brooks.
for both interview rounds.
Okay, allow me 1 second. I'm going to come back to Trustee Guzman.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I would like to second that.
Thank you, colleagues. We have a live motion on the floor. I see that there are members in the queue. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. I think my question got answered. So it's in accordance to our current travel policy, which is pretty, it puts those parameters that Nancy was talking about. So
Yeah,
great.
now I
And
feel
we'll get that policy from Nicole, and we will forward that to the applicants so that they know, and they'll submit expenses directly to the district. So
Now I
think
feel
it's great.
confident.
Yeah, I think that's great.
We're here to feel confident about our decisions. I love it. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I think I had the same question as Trustee Bustamante Adams, just about the limit and making sure, that it's just here for business. Thank you.
Very, very good. Colleagues, we have a active motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. Nancy, keep the ball rolling.
Thank you. You guys are doing great. Item number 6, approving the advertising option. The backup to this is reference 2.01F. We are recommending package 2, which is $3,400, which gives you Ed Week and AASA. HYA obviously does a lot of advertising for you within our networks, on our website, through our social media pages, but we do believe that it is in your interest to also put it in these 2 big national publications. You might also consider ALAS and NABSB, which would, the action item before you is to approve package option 2 plus ALAS and NABSB for a total expenditure of $3,920.
Great. Colleagues, any discussion? Otherwise, we're looking for a motion. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to motion that we go with package 2 plus I'll ask the NASB.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Oh, trustees, I'm sorry. Thank you, trustee Satori. Go ahead. And the mic, please.
I second the motion.
Okay. Thank you, trustee Satori. All right, colleagues, we have a motion by trustee Bustamante Adams, a second by trustee Satori. Please cast your vote. Great. Thank you, colleagues. That a motion passes 6-0. Nancy?
Okay, moving on to item number 7, approving independent background checks. Obviously, anyone that we bring forward to you, we will have done reference checks both with the people that they list and also through our network of people that know them. We also do social media checks, but what we offer to our clients is formal third-party investigative due diligence. You can see on the bottom of reference 2.01G what that includes. I think one of the most significant things that we offer to our clients is the inclusion of a credit report. This is someone that is involved in running your school district. It takes a lot to be able to be approved to do that. There's a lot of legalities involved in being able to have that access. We've gone through all those hoops so that we can bring that to you. Our boards usually make a decision as to whether or not to have the background check done before they interview any of the selected people that they've chosen to interview, or if they wait to the finalist level and then maybe do only 3. So that's what we're bringing before the board. We are hoping that you'll see the importance of this. And so really the question before you is, do you want it included in the packet of any individual that you've chosen to interview? Or do you want to wait and only have the investigative background checks done on finalists?
Thank you, Nancy. And to be clear, these are the additional expenses should the board
Correct.
choose to do the.
And we had an action item with like a not to exceed number in there, so that, because we don't really know how many you're going to choose to interview or how many might be finalists. So we just said, let's go with a not to exceed number. And that way, when we get to that part, we can decide if in fact you're going to interview 5 individuals that's within that not to exceed expenditure of $10,000, then we'll go ahead and do it on all of them. For example, if there is more than that you're going to interview as a first round, then maybe we would do just the basic ones and not do the social media. We have some flexibility. So that's what I was recommending.
Got it. Okay. All right, colleagues. Trustee Satori, did you have something? Or
sorry,
did I
that
leave
was
your
from
mic?
earlier.
Oh, I'm going to turn off your mic. Thank you. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I have some questions about this because I know that we have some social media warriors that will come up and do public comment and tell us all the things about, and I would like to know about that ahead of time. So my question is, when we're making a motion, is it that we don't want to exceed a certain amount, Nicole, or is it that we want to utilize the comprehensive background check? Because she has comprehensive and basic.
We can change the motion to whatever you want, and you can say, we want comprehensive background checks on anyone we choose to interview. That's fine.
Well, then
whatever.
let me seek some advice from our board liaison, just in regard to the budget requests, because.
Yeah, that's what I need to know, please.
Mr. Caruso?
Mr. Caruso, you probably thought you were going to get away with not talking today.
Actually, on the contrary, I'm like, let me jump in. Madam President, members of the board, Joe Caruso for the record. So to answer the question, item 6 and item 7, I need direction from the board to do a budget request. Because remember, you voted for the contract. These are additional expenses. So we'll have to do from the general fund, transfer money to the board office budget to offset the expenses. Answer your questions. So that's what for both those 2 items.
So, okay, before you leave, stay right there. I need clarifying because I have my friend at the end of the dais who likes to clarify. So what you want to know is package 2 that we just passed. that we're asking for $3,920 because we are including ALIS and NASB. Is that what you're asking us to say?
Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Guzman, to your question, yes. So we'll need to clarify that we are authorizing me, Joe, to submit a budget request to the Deputy Superintendent of Business Administration for that amount. And then on the same budget request, if you should approve item 7, I can tack that on as well so that the board office budget will get that additional funding to offset the expenses for this.
And the languages.
Correct. And then the languages, which, to clarify the memo, I know that there was some back and forth, that those are in order. That was the request from Trustee Esparza-Sofragan was for the most predominant languages in the district. Highest is the top in order. So that, off the top of my head, I believe Persian would be number 8, if I'm correct. So those would be the top 8. So then we would multiply $415 times 8 for that expense.
You get English and Spanish included.
Okay.
So times 6.
6 times 415, and then we would have the item number 6 and item number 7 to calculate in. And I think item 7, Ms. Perez stated on the record, was 10,000 as a cap. And then, of course, item 6, the ALAS and the NABC fee, and then the 6 for the translation.
So for consistency, let's take a vote on item number 7 when you guys are ready, and let's put all those budget requests, the 3 of them, into an additional separate motion. Does that?
Okay, I was gonna do that.
Okay.
Is that okay?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Trustee Guzman, we also need to add the reimbursement of the superintendent travel to that budget request.
I thought it was already in there according to our policy. No, it is not. Okay, so Joe, don't move, okay? Because I want to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. So I move that we, we have a $2,500 budget, because it's $2,490. So $2,500 budget for translation of the survey, that we have a $3,920 budget for the advertising services that include ALAS and NASB on package 2, and that we not exceed $10,000, but have a comprehensive background check on each of the members or candidates that we interview. How was that?
Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Guzman, very well done. And then the last piece, do we want to incorporate that now, or do we want to wait till we get to the next item?
Do we include the travel? And we follow the travel policy according to the CCSD employee policy? Yeah, that works. Okay.
So,
So I'll restate, because if I don't, I have a friend who will be upset. It's true, right? I know. I've been here a while.
And then the reimbursements, which we
Okay.
won't know, but you could put a cap on it.
I've been here.
so.
That's
I mean,
right. It is
if we're
trauma.
going with 5
Okay.
people,
So,
that's 2,000 apiece, that's enough.
we're going to start with languages, okay? So I move that we not exceed $2,500 for the translation of the survey. I move that we not exceed $3,920 on package 2 and include ALAS and NASB for our advertising services. I move that we utilize the employee policy for travel of the candidates. And I move that we not exceed $10,000 for the comprehensive background check for each candidate that we will be interviewing. Yes, sir.
Madam President,
did.
members of the board, Trustee Guzman, great job. Not to, again, the devil's in the details.
Right, I know.
So we can follow the employee policy for travel, but I need a number. So not to exceed 10,000?
I would say yes.
Okay. So 2,500 translation, 3,920 advertising, 10,000 background check, 10,000 for, at most, for reimbursement for
Not to
travel.
exceed 10,000 at most for travel. Trustee Cavazos, how is that?
I did have one clarifying question. I don't know if this would be for Joe. When we say on the employee travel reimbursement, and we say for candidates, is that from all levels, from the initial interviews all the way down to the final candidates?
Yes, because trustee Brooks in her prior motion
Right.
said.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify that, and fantastic job, trustee Guzman.
Thank you.
Are you ready to make the second, trustee Cavazos?
Yes, I am.
Come back on.
I would like to make a second on trustee Guzman's motion.
All right, I love it, teamwork. All right, colleagues, we have a live motion. Cheers to trustee Guzman for walking through that, doing it graciously, the support of Joe Caruso. I see trustee Zamora is in the queue. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Just doing the calculations, that's just 5 background checks. I just wanted to let
Yes.
everyone know.
We're discussing here the travel because there's the initial interview, then there's the semifinalists, and then there's the bringing the finalists back. So that could be probably like 9 trips, 10 trips. We think maybe the not to exceed needs to be higher. Of course, they're going to follow the policy. We'll keep it as low as we can, but then he doesn't have to go back to the whatever the process is of making another request.
Good point. Trustee Guzman. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Trustee Guzman.
President Garcia Morales, I'd like to amend my motion on travel to,
Madam President, members of the board, trustee Guzman. So I think the confusion and I appreciate Ms. Perez, phone a friend, the 9 trips, and that's what we're trying to calculate, because we don't know how many people you're gonna
so
have.
not
So
to exceed 50,000, would that?
that would be more than ample, I think.
Yeah, that's more than enough.
So-
Okay, but the reason why I say that is because we are getting into high travel season, right? And we don't know if we're going to ask them last minute. And as a traveler, I know how expensive it can be to go to Alabama and to go to Arkansas.
Especially last minute. You're right.
Yes. So that's why I am asking. I mean, obviously, I don't want you to hit that number, but trustee Cavazos, I would like to amend my motion to have travel not exceed 50,000. Can I get a second?
I concur with that amendment.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second, and I want to honor trustee Zamora, who's been patiently waiting in the queue. Come on back, and then we'll take the vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't done when I was saying that that's 5 backgrounds. No worries, it's okay. But can I just get clarification when or how do we decide who's getting the 5 backgrounds, right? Because we don't know how many people we want to fully interview, right? And I think we definitely kind of just skipped a few steps because I was following along with our board council of doing what we've been doing, like approving by item. And from my understanding, we were supposed to do this item 7 and approve it like we've been doing the previous ones, and then at the end do a whole budget one. So I feel like we skipped a few steps, and I kind of want to see if we could reground ourselves and get clarification of.
Trustee Zamora, you heard me correctly. That's what I asked to do, but then we were just going on that train, and I was just letting you guys see if we could make sense of it. But I think that would be clear if we could do it that way.
Okay, because I did have questions like how are we deciding, right? Who's going to get it? Is it going before, the first round, before the second round of interviews and all that? So I think there's still a little bit more of discussion that needs to happen.
Yeah, you
so
followed me.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy. Please
Right.
help us, based off of your experience, at what point do we make decisions about?
I
number of
think
people?
for anyone that you have decided that you are bringing here and paying for to come here for an interview, that you do a comprehensive background check. I think you get it as part of the package with their resume, with all their background information. I think that's a best practice. But given the budget now that includes all of these things, there will be enough monies in there should you need 6 instead of 5, right? Or if you need, 4, because now with the travel budget, there's some room there. And Nicole, is that the way it works? Because since there's going to be one transfer of funds for all of these optional services? No.
Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Perez, to your question, so the transfer process, basically, we would submit one request for all these items. And then that would come to the board budget. So then the board budget would have this money to work through the process.
So if they needed more with due diligence but less with travel, that would be okay?
I could write it where it's coding, but yeah, I mean, I would have to, knowing the board's approved this amount, then we could potentially, if the board gave me the flexibility to say I need 10,000 more in travel or 10,000 more in translation, we're going to take it from travel, knowing that I stay within this limit, I think would probably be good.
Yeah, or with the background checks, just not put a not to exceed and just say that we are going to have a background check done for any individual the board chooses to interview. And then there's not a not to exceed on that one item, but we have the schedule of what that costs.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback. Mr. Caruso, don't go away. Stay put, please. Thank you. I want to honor that I hear two things. One is that we've already made a motion on the floor. I also acknowledge colleagues want to separate this particular motion separately. Trustee Guzman, is it okay if we set your motion to the side for just 1 second and come back to you after we finish this 7 piece?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Trustee Zamora, you're still in the queue. Did you have anything else?
I do. I mean, this is I think a few of us first time doing this, so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So what it sounds like is that we, at this point, I honestly feel like we need to decide how many people we want, like put a number, because I think once we put a number of how many people we want to interview the first time, that will tell us the travel budget, that will tell us our background budget, right? So does that need to be like something we vote on, or a motion of, hey, we're deciding this is the amount of people, or, yeah, I'm a little confused.
Yeah, but I think that there is thanks for that, Trustee Zamora, and I'm going to add my piece here because this is also my first time going through a soup search process. However, it may be premature for us to assign a number, just simply because we don't have the candidates in front of us. We haven't identified the leadership profile yet. We still have some other steps that we have to take into consideration, and I think the one piece is that we can always come back, and if we need to add more resources, we could do that, or make some other adjustments, as we've given Joe potentially some flexibility to adjust within the budget that exists. That the board has approved for this particular item. So there's a little bit of ambiguity and trust in the process and HYA's ability to come to us with candidates, and then for us to trust ourselves in the ability to say we're going to decide on X number once we have more information in front of us. Trustee Zamora, did you have anything else? Nope. You're good? Nope. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, I agree, and that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, right? If we're able to kind of be more flexible and moving forward. I just needed that clarification because I think it was getting a little confusing, and I see the team also nodding like, yes. So thank you for that.
Cool. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Question regarding the timeline for the background. So let's say hypothetically the board chooses 5 candidates. You're going to do the background. At that point in time, is there a possibility some of them may be excluded? And would we know that prior to scheduling the interview process?
So, correct, you would select on October the 2nd, as the calendar stands now, which ones to interview. We would immediately do the background checks on the ones you've chosen to interview and have them to you with the package on October the 9th. Now, if there was something glaring that came back, right, that we would have to have that discussion, but you would get it for all the ones that you have decided to interview.
Okay, so if something glaring came up, they would still be already scheduled for the interview process, and they would not be
yeah, they would
excluded.
have to, because there's needs time to get all that information, right? And sometimes we'll have almost an entire report done, but there may be a courthouse that they haven't gotten that adjudication record, or, right? So usually we can get the entire thing done in that amount of time. But sometimes there are anomalies. Some of the different courthouses in different parts of the country just are slower if there wasn't an actual adjudication on file, right? Because so sometimes it may come back that there was an arrest record but not an adjudication. Then they actually send people there to get the record, right? So sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But I think this is doable, and I think the minute you decide on October 2nd, we'll put those orders in, and we will have them back to you for your meeting on the 9th.
Thank you.
Well, that's still subject to potentially not the 9th, but yes.
Thank you. I'm not going
Around the
to,
ninth.
I'm going to make a motion to actually accept the comprehensive option. I'm not going to name the number of candidates because we're going to build the flexibility into the motion for the finance part.
Trustee Brooks, I hear that's a motion for the comprehensive package.
For anyone they choose to interview.
Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay. Do we have a second? Trustee Sparsa-Stroffigan?
I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we're going to take a vote on this particular item. Yes, so we feel good? We're good? All right. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Sparsa-Stroffigan. Please cast your vote. Gracias. That motion passes 6-0. We're celebrating over here that we feel good. That's what I heard on this side. We feel good. Thank you for helping us get there, everyone. All right. Now, Council, can we go back to Trustee Guzman's comprehensive overview? Take us there, Trustee Guzman. Thank you.
Okay. Let's do this. Okay, so comprehensively, I want to make a motion for, hold on, I had a number. It was, hold on, sorry. I wanted to make a motion to comprehensively move over funds for $56,410.00 to be able to do the translation, the advertising services, the travel, and, oh no, I didn't remember the background checks. I need to add, so it's $66,410. I apologize. It's $66,410 to do the executive due diligence, advertising services, translation, and travel. Providing staff the flexibility to utilize those funds in all of those areas.
Great work. Thank you, Trustee Guzman. I'm going to go back to Trustee Cavazos. Do you second? Oh, thank you about that. Do you second that motion?
Madam President, yes, I do second that motion. I thought I had you, Trustee Guzman, on the executive due diligence, but of course you caught it. Good job.
Great. That's high praise right there. That is high praise. Love it. All right, colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. All right, thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. Nancy, we're good, Council?
Final item, you
Yes,
guys.
final. Take us there.
Final item. So I'm referring to additional reference 2.01B. And what's important here for us to know is, first of all, what we put before you is knowledge that the benefit package must comply with the Nevada revised statutes and also with the Nevada pay disclosure requirements when we post the job. So that's why we're talking about this so early on, because as we post things, we'll want to have obviously a range that is reasonable. What we put before you is that mostly that in other larger state systems, the type of benefits that are typical but that will not be possible here because of the Nevada revised statutes are things like the 100% family coverage with no contributions, employer contributions to annuities, a car or an allowance, payments for past and current pension contributions, whole life insurance policies, et cetera. And so in Nevada, it actually makes it a little bit easier because, in essence, as we state on page 2, you're going to basically have a salary range, and they're going to get reimbursed for mileage per the IRS rates. They're going to get medical insurance per the exhibit that everybody else gets with payments that they have to make like any other employee. The life insurance will be what other administrators receive, and that there are no employer contributions to any annuities. And so in thinking about what that range is, I want you to think about the fact that there may be a loss of total compensation given some of the more typical benefits that are provided to superintendents in their current position when they come here. So not the salary, but the compensation. I did give you some comparisons. For most of these, I have the actual contract that was signed. Some of them I had to rely on other information like New York, but the rest of them I do have their actual contracts and tried to do a quick little summary to give you an idea of an illustration of the bullets that were in the former section about those kind of benefits that you won't be able to give as part of a total compensation package. And so I think what we need to do today is just discuss a range so that when we post the job and we put a range out there to comply with the Nevada pay disclosure requirements, that's been a discussion.
All right, thank you for that, Nancy. Colleagues, is it the pleasure of the board to provide a total for the compensation package? If so, I'll entertain, a range. If so, then I will like to entertain a discussion. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. Nancy, in the comparisons that you provided, which one is closest to us as far as the number of students?
These are, you're number 5 amongst so New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami-Dade, you guys, then Broward and Houston.
Say it one more time.
New York, followed by LA, followed by Chicago, followed by Miami-Dade, followed by Clark County, followed by, I don't know what the order is in the last 2, Broward and Houston, I'm sorry. But they are numbers 6 and 7, I'm not sure which one is.
Thank you, that was
6 or
helpful.
7. Yes.
Great, thank you for that. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. Did you have a suggested range? Is it 400,000 would be the ceiling, or?
No, I didn't. I just gave that as an example. I think you can have a range as long as the range is reasonable. Usually under the laws that are now kind of prevailing all over the country, you can't have a range of, $10,000 to 450, right? That's just not acceptable because now you're really kind of evading the purpose of the law. So I think a range that's within, $50,000, I think is more than acceptable. Nicole, you might be able to comment a little bit more on what's acceptable. That I've seen many districts do a range like that.
Yeah, I think 50,000 is acceptable.
Council, could you say that into the record, please?
Yes, I think 50,000 would be acceptable.
Thank you for that. Trustee Johnson?
I had the same question just about the range, but I'd like to make a motion that we have a range from 350 to 400.
Okay.
And that's $1,000, not hundreds of dollars. To be clear, I know Joe said the devil's in the details, so I don't want anybody thinking we're going to be paying in ones.
Look at us, being excellent students. I love it. Thank you, Trustee Johnson. Trustee Guzman? Trustee Guzman?
I'd like to second that.
Thank you. Excellent. All right, colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Johnson, a second by Trustee Guzman. Forgive me, I see Trustee Brooks in the queue. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. So just for clarification, is it possible that the salary might vary and possibly be higher than this? This is just for the posting?
Yeah, I mean, once you choose a candidate and you start negotiating with them and their attorney, yes, this is really just for the posting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, colleagues, back to the motion.
That is okay, Nicole, correct? Yes.
Yes, okay. It sounds like it is okay to have this range. Perfect. All right, colleagues, please cast your vote. The motion is for a range between 350,000 and 400,000. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. Nancy, what else do we got?
We are done, although the subsequent meetings are very significant. This is the heaviest lift, is making all of these decisions. So thank you so much for your attention to detail today, for getting through the planning meeting. Now we get to really start putting everything in motion and being with you along the way as your guides and as your facilitators and striving to exceed your expectations every step of the way. You can reach out to Sean or I at any time that you need to. We'll get information to the rest of the team just to make sure that there's not conversations going to too many people to make sure that we're properly being transparent about everything. So please, you can go through your president, EGM, and then through Joe and Nicole. So we've really been I love that. I love that.
Thank you. I don't know that many people are privy to that. Now they are, and that's great. I am EGM.
Well, the rest of the meeting today, I did call you Madam President,
You're
so I sorry that, and it just kind of came out.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm grateful for it.
But yes, please know that you can reach out at any time if there's questions along the way. Please, follow that protocol so that Nicole and Joe and Madam Chair and then Sean and I are involved so that we make sure we contain the conversations so that we can be transparent and comply with all the statutes.
Great. Thank you for today's presentation. Incredibly grateful. I do see some colleagues in the queue. Before I turn it over to them, I suspect that it's with respect to this particular item, colleagues? Yes? Okay. I want to simply share a point of gratitude to our firm for walking us through. Nancy, thank you for leading the ship and guiding us. Thank you to Joe and Caitlin for supporting this work. Council, thank you for your unending support, ensuring that we continue to stay compliant and focused on these items that are before us, and we avoid any legal liabilities. Our next step was to have a presentation at the work session regarding the draft focus group meetings. That's in August 7th. And look forward to seeing the proposal of the firm. And then trustees, as Nancy has shared earlier, we will be receiving contact from the search firm regarding the individual trustee interviews. So thank you for that in advance as well. All right, colleagues. Trustee Esparza-Strafican, you're in the queue.
So first of all, thank you for listening. We did ask to bring the team, and you brought them all. So thank you for doing that. We're very much noticing the responsiveness, so I appreciate that. Second thing is I failed to ask a question because I've been bringing this up a number of times. I know that Mr. Joseph is very much aware. After our one-on-ones, how soon will we get access to the data portal to actually start seeing those individuals that are going to be applying? I know that was an ask for trustees to have access to the portal. So is there a timeline for that?
Thank you for that. I actually want to jump in because that has been a point of discussion during meetings I know that Council and Joe have had with HYA. And there was some legal concerns that I brought up actually about that platform, and I'll allow Council to provide additional context for us.
Yeah, the problem with you guys being a public body is that anything you have access to, the public has to have access to at the same time. And I don't know that the search firm can utilize this portal for everyone. So I don't believe we'll be using the portal. was my understanding.
That is correct. We've decided that given the laws in Nevada, that it would be better to have one source of information for everyone, which is the website, because there cannot be something separate for the board. And so unfortunately, in this case, we cannot use the portal that we use in other states just because of the transparency laws here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. That is something that is certainly a learning curve for all of us as we navigate as a public body, doing public work, needing to continue to be transparent. And so I think this is the best way we can continue to be transparent.
Otherwise, it would just be a replication. It's not that we can't use it, but it would just be a replication then of what's on the website. It would be the same thing in two places.
Thank you for that.
And we'll be working closely with communications and updating the website regularly.
So typically in a website, for example, that's where we'd, when the candidates came and their profiles and the information, we'd put that in the portal, board would have access to it. Just in this format, when we present the slate, it'll go all to your website. So it'll be a one shot, we'll put it all there at once and everyone will see the candidates and whatever information we'd be sharing with you would be public.
Now, obviously, some of the background information would not be public. We'll work through council on that. You guys would get that separately because that would obviously is very sensitive information.
Thank you. All right, Trustee Brooks, you're in the queue.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is about the timing of when the board should discuss the length of the contract. I know that it's a big ask to ask somebody to move across the country if we find somebody that's well qualified and out of state. At what point do we discuss that, let candidates know what the length of service is they're applying for, because that may inform their decision and their success?
Yeah, agreed. Have you had that conversation amongst yourselves?
We're not going to have that conversation today because it wasn't publicly noticed.
Right. We're not having the conversation. My question is what is the appropriate time for this conversation to occur?
I would say at the very latest after the initial rounds. You don't want people to continue on if they are in totally disagreement with what you're willing to put forward. We can have it before the initial round, meaning before you choose who to interview so that they know what the parameters are. In fact, it's very clear what the salary range will be, what the benefits are, so we can include that in one of the future meetings, Nicole, where they make that decision. And that way we can include that in the information that we provide people as we're recruiting.
Thank you. Yeah, my ask
It's a
is
great point.
definitely to make sure that that timeline is published, just so that people know what they're getting into.
It's a great question. Thank you very much, Trustee Brooks.
Okay, great, thank you. Something that we'll keep in mind as we get closer to make sure to bring up for publicly noticed conversation. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. And I'd also like to express my gratitude. I've been very pleased at your due diligence, so thank you. My question is, last time I had a deadline of 5 things to prepare for today. Can you remind me what my assignment is as an individual, just as a member of the body? What am I supposed to do next?
You're going to get an interview time with Dr. Joseph, and you'll look out for that communication so you can schedule that. And when we do publish to the board the list of focus groups, you're going to review them before the meeting on the 7th.
Great, thank you. Perfect. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to kind of piggyback back to what Trustee Esparza had brought up, and that council had clarified, further clarification. So basically, since we're not going to have that portal, since you guys, the firm, are communicating with board counsel, with our board liaison, and with our board president during these times, then we can reach out to any of the 3 of them if we should have additional questions.
That is correct.
Other than during our individual, interviews. Is that correct?
Trustee Cavazos, the way I understand your question is it okay for members of the board to reach out independently to HYA?
No,
if
to
there's-
you,
to me.
Nicole, or
Forgive me.
No,
Yes,
it was
thank you.
what Nancy is saying is that that if we do have additional questions outside of our individual interviews, which are going to be scheduled soon, that we have you three resources to reach out to. In other words, you're communicating with them, council's communicating with them, and board liaisons communicating with them. So we have you three resources to reach out to.
And Trustee Cavazos, if I may, I would say just reach out to myself and Joe just to avoid any open meeting law concerns.
You're reading my mind there, so I just wanted to ask about that, but just clarify that there are conversations being had with all three of you, but in light of open meeting law, more prudent to just reach out to the two of you.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for raising that up, Trustee Cavazos. Great question. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, team. This was really helpful. I am a visual learner. I love these because I think you all do a really great job of presenting, not just for myself, I think for the community, which is really important for them to follow along. I have a clarifying question. None of the trustees will have access to this portal then, correct?
There won't be a portal.
Oh, there won't be a portal. Okay. And then my second question was, honestly, I'm being fully transparent here. I definitely, did not submit the deadline to submit some names and focus groups for the organization, and I apologize to my community. But is there still time to be able to submit that? Is there a deadline? It's just before the August 7th meeting?
Yeah, so everything that we've received so far, we're going to put into a list of groups, and we will get that to the trustees before the August 7th meeting. But if there's something glaring that isn't on those voluminous lists, yes, please let Nicole and Joe know so that we can make sure that we include it when the board looks over everything on the 7th.
Can I actually make a recommendation? Because at this point now, the list will be in your hands. What's the best way to get this information to you all, instead of like filtering it through Joe and Nicole? Joe, did you have something to share? Did you want to come up? I don't know if you're making eye contact with me and scaring me.
Gray hairs are sticking out. Love you all. Love, love, love. We need to have a deadline for this and a date so that we know, because here's the thing. If we look at our calendar, by open meeting law, we have to post. And I know all of you, you like to look at things in advance. So if I may, Madam President, members of the board, so if the meeting is on August 7th, the agenda will more than likely post on the 31st. So if we were to get information from you, today is the 25th, I would say probably no later than Wednesday, the 31st, to give you enough time to add it to the focus group list.
Which we said will be posted before the 7th. It might be like the 5th or the 6th. Because you're going to post the agenda on the 31st.
The agenda will post the 31st.
Right.
And then ideally, if we were to post the focus group listings the 5th, that would give the board 2 full days.
I think
Does that work?
I think that's a great plan.
So if I may, Madam President, suggest that let's pick high noon on the 31st. So by 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Las Vegas, Nevada, we will have the information. And I say that just for clarity's sake, because I know all of you have lives and are busy, but then this way here by noon on the 31st, then that gives me time to consolidate. I'm actually just going to batch the emails together, and then I will send that as one file to Ms. Perez. And that'll give you enough time then to work. Okay,
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Nancy. Trustee Zamora?
So to put it out on the webs for anyone listening, there's still time for the rest of the board, right? To be able to submit groups, organizations, everything. So
yes,
everyone's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm ensuring that it's done before the 31st at 11:59 a.m.
Yes.
Thanks for lifting that up, Trustee Zamora. Okay, great, colleagues. Thank you, everyone. I believe that I don't see any additional members in the queue. I believe that concludes our discussion and this piece of today's board meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Eternally to you and your descendants.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, colleagues, we're going to keep moving on. Item 3.01, that's the upcoming Board of Trustees meeting. It's a work session, Wednesday, August 7th at 4 p.m. here at the Edward Greer Education Center boardroom. We're going to move on to public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. We have one public comment, David Gomez, the second. Come on up. Come on, let's go. What is this? Making your way down.
I'm getting there. This is The Price is Right. David Gomez, Nevada Peace Alliance president. I was reading some of those things inside the groups, and some of those people, and I've been here a long time, do not belong in those groups. I'm sorry. I have my own interaction as a SOT member of Rancho High School, and I have my interactions with some of these people, and I'm sorry, they really do not belong in these groups making decisions for my student and every other student out there. It's unfortunate that some of the people that you look in these groups, it's really funny to look at when you see it, and you see the same people always popping up. Now, Dr. Greta PA, she's wonderful. I like Dr. Greta PA. You know, she's an educator. But, you know, some of these things that are fit for choice are not the best choice to make decisions for my students and my children. And I don't approve of it. So, you know, I see that some of you guys didn't even appoint anybody or mention some of the people that you would like to put in there. So, you know, I just think that I'm going to keep a copy of this. And if something bad happens, I know how to come back and say, here's your copy. Here's the people you picked. This is what happened with our school district. And this is what happened with our superintendent. And this is why we're back in the same boat that we started in. So when you look at these agendas and you look at some of this things, I'm just telling you the honest to God truth because of my interaction that you guys do not have with people on a daily basis because I'm out there all day long. And if I show you my fuel surcharges of what I spend in diesel fuel, you'll be amazed. You'll be like, wow, this man spends a tremendous amount of money because I drive around. But, you know, I consider my God to be the God of all. And he says the greatest are the children. The greatest in the kingdom of heaven are the children. And Jesus even told his disciples to move out of the way. Those are the 12 most trusted men he followed, or they followed him all around. And he told them, move out of the way. He said, let them come to me. Do not deny them to come to me. So if he calls them the greatest, and we're dealing with the greatest, why are we putting people or appointing people or suggesting people to be in position to make decision for the greatest? And I don't agree with it. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you will find out that I like to hold that paper up and say, here's your accountability because you made a mistake again.
Okay, all right, moving on to item 5.0, adjournment. Colleagues, looking for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams.
I would second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Colleagues, we heard the motions, looking for action at this point. All right, thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. The time is 11:19 a.m. Wishing you a great rest of your day.